Well, I think startups, small businesses, they need people that are very flexible, so you have to be prepared to be like a Swiss knife. You have your preferences. There are things you like to do. There are things you are good at doing. But in a startup or a small business, you will be forced to do things that you don't like to do and to do things that you don't know how to do it. Obviously, do things that when you don't know how to do it, you have to be, a curious mindset and so on. So if you're not curious, maybe you should not go on that direction, because you need to be able to do self-learning, to be curious and so on. And then obviously to build a team that will compensate the area of your weaknesses.
Hey everyone, this is Devin Miller here with another episode of The Inventive Journey. I'm your host, Devin Miller, the serial entrepreneur that's grown several startups into 7- and 8-figure businesses, as well as the founder and CEO of Miller IP Law, where we help startups and small businesses with their patents and trademarks. You ever need help with yours, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Now, today we've got another great guest on the podcast, Eric Schaffner. And Eric graduated from high school in France and went to a specialized school studying engineering for the food industry, and then worked as a process engineer for a pet food company for a period of time. Moved to South Africa to look at improving food packaging business. Then moved back to France and ran a equipment sales company for a beverage company. Switched over to a water testing company. Moved to Japan. Did some more work in the food and packaging beverage industry. After which moved to the U.S. and started working on the plastics and human pollution problem. And so, with that much as an introduction, welcome onto the podcast, Eric.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be with you today. Thank you for hosting me.
Absolutely. Excited to have you on. So I just gave kind of a 30-second condensed version to a much longer journey, but why don't we rewind and unpack a bit and tell us a little bit about how your journey got started in France, going to high school studying engineering in the food industry.
Yeah, well, I always wanted to work on to do something related to biology, and so I managed to be qualified for engineering school. The French system has some exams and so on, competition, and then if you're selected, you can enter the school you want. So and ended up in a school where we studied an engineering, specializing on beverage production, productivity, and beer processing. So that was the starting point, but it's also a very versatile education. So after you find a job and you follow the string of the career. So I started on the brewery side, on the packaging, first on the processing, on the pet food, like you mentioned. And then after next assignment, move to overseas positions and so on.
So now, so just rewinding a bit. So you're coming out of high school, and then you go into, I think, working initially at a pet food company, and doing a
pet food company. Yes, as a process engineer, optimizing processes. Was quite interesting actually, because the whole project was to reduce the losses due to on the production, and finding correlation between the way people, operator, use the production equipment and the losses that was generated. So basically, people wanted to speed up the machine, run as fast as possible, but we found out that the faster they run the machine, the more defects they generate, which was not seen immediately at the production level, but on the quality control. So we put all the processes in place, different parameters that you have to follow, and if you are outside of the brackets, you will not qualify the production. So we could save a lot of money actually by optimizing that process. So I enjoy it a lot, because there was a lot of interaction, and I was young engineer, freshly graduated, so you have to demonstrate, you have to influence, because obviously you are still considered as the newbie and maybe not knowledgeable. So I think that was the first step of my career, where I always enjoyed to do influencing than more pushing, managing, and giving orders.
No, sounds like it was a good initial step into the industry. Now, how long were you at the pet food company, or how long were you working as a process engineer there?
1.5 year.
So now you're there for about 1.5 years, and then I think from there you ended up going to South Africa and doing food packaging. So kind of, how did you, what made you motivate you to kind of change, and what took you, or what made you decide to go to South Africa?
Well, an external factor, as a French, at that time we had a mandatory military service, and there was a very cool possibility to somehow swap your military assignments if you were working for a French company abroad. So you have to find a French company, but had to do it before a certain age. Otherwise, you go to the standard one. So I managed to find a company that had a subsidiary in South Africa, and that's how I ended up in South Africa. So working for them for 18 months instead of doing my military service. So it's a kind of it's a good program. Now the military service doesn't exist anymore. It's not mandatory in France anymore, but they have kept that system as a voluntary base now. A student can join your companies they have a special benefits for the company, and there's special benefit for the student. But at that time, it was as a substitute to the military, which was very good for me, because as a graduated engineer, my performance would not have been very valuable for the military framework, but as a substitute was very good, and at least I can help the French development of abroad, which is one of the objectives of that kind of that scheme. So that's how I ended up in South Africa, and then the job was great, and I was satisfying my employers. So they asked me if I wanted to stay in South Africa and do more positions. So I accepted, and then carry on over there and stay 4.5 years in South Africa.
So that sounds like it was a good position, a good move. And so you're there working in South Africa, doing the food packaging, doing that for 4.5 years or so, and continuing forth. Now, I think at one point you decided to move back to France and kind of switch gears. It's kind of same industry, but going a bit more into the selling of beverage or beverage equipment in the beverage industry.
Correct.
So kind of what motivated that shift, or moving back from South Africa and changing paths just a little bit?
Well, I think there was two directions. Is first, while I was doing my work in South Africa, so I was helping clients like breweries to optimize their production lines. So I was doing line audits and then project management and so on. But I was also supporting the two directors of the subsidiary to sell the next project and so on, with my technical advice and so on. And I always felt that I was quite attracted by it, a more sales position, and moving away, let's say, gradually from just the project management. Because project management, basically, the essence of work is you are treating problems. If there was no problem, you don't need a project manager. You just have to plot everything on an Excel if everything goes well according to plan. But life is not like that. We have a human factor that mess up a bit. So you have to manage that and that. But it means also that because it's the essence of the work, you treat problems. Once the problem if finished, you will have another problem to fix, and you're just repeating all the time. You're always between two chairs, between your employer's interest, your client's interest. So yes, and I could feel that going towards sales was more something that will match more my next appetite. And then I got that opportunity. There was also some merger acquisitions, so we could jump on a different company of the group and so on, or the new group. And then there was a position for that. So I moved back to France and take that more sales orientated position.
No, makes sense. Sounds like it was a good opportunity. Move back to where you were from and get a or focus on a bit of a different area within the industry. So now you move over to that company and kind of walks you. How did that go? Was it a good move back? And how long were you there? And kind of what happened in that phase of the journey?
Yeah, it was a good move back because I could fulfill that appetite for being more on the sales, and then the position offered was to start a brand new territory. So I was in charge of developing the business from all Southern Europe, so from Italy to Middle East up to Egypt. So I was like traveling and so on. So it was also good for that, discovering plenty new countries, new cultures. So yes, I was back to France, but I was also exposed to a wider variety of culture and people or topics. So you have to find agents, you have to convince clients and so on. So quite exciting. So it was good move, and then put me also in position to grab the next position, I would say, where then I took over taking care of a global account worldwide. So yes, I was still in France, but then having a worldwide exposure, which was also quite nice.
No, sounds like it was a good ground for experience and good to be able to get some of that sales and that experience under your belt. And so now you've come back to France or in the equipment sales and the beverage industry, and then I think you decided to make a bit of a changing gear or make a bit of a switch and go to work in water testing business. Is that right?
It's not water test. It was part of the same portfolio. We had production lines for water, uh, for any product. But then, as a key account, global key account manager, handing over the client, being a part of Nestlé and focused on water, so we were really focused on just water equipment. That's where it comes from. So moving, going to US yearly for new investments, going to different places where the client is growing new projects. But also handling all the challenges who exist with the existing install base. When you take care of a global clients like that, you have everything. You are supported by the tech people, by the marketing people, and so. But you have to coordinate everybody to satisfy the clients as much as possible, and align also the company towards the client's needs, which is also interesting. Yeah, at the crossroad between the company interest and the client interest, and you have to influence both sides. I remember that I managed to influence some R&D projects and so on, so we could get a machine that gave us some step ahead and increase our market share and so on. So very interesting. But it's a long journey. When we started with the client, we were quite small, and when I passed over to my successor, we were at 80% market share on the equipment side. So it was great success, but it took a long time. You have to be resilient and persistent to move the things. It's not just you do the job and after a month you get a result. It doesn't happen like that.
So you had it sounds like it was a good opportunity, also one that you got to learn a bit of patience and planning and working on a project over an extended period of time. Now, if I were to remember, kind of as you continued along your journey, then at some point you decided that you wanted to move to Japan, or you saw an opportunity.
Yeah, I've been offered the opportunity to relocate, to take a new position and to be the head of the Japan subsidiary and looking after Japan market and Korean market. And that was an experience of a lifetime. All the employees were speaking English, but all Japanese. So you jump in a very different culture. which is very very impressive because they managed to combine modernity and the respect of tradition. Often you see in society that developed, that when you start to add modernity, the tradition are lost. And Japan is really an example where they can be super tradition and combine that with the modernity. And it's a good lesson to learn, because sometimes losing tradition, you lose also some I would say the moral some guidelines that we should, we start to be more focused on ourselves, and instead of we try to still work as a community and look after the others. So there's a lot of values that are lost along the loss of culture.
Fair enough. Well, sounds like it was a good experience. Now, how long did you stay in Japan for? How long did you work in the food and beverage industry there?
For 4.5 years.
So now 4.5 years, again, kind of sounds like, it looks like you like to move around, have different experiences, different opportunities, and take advantage of what's before you. So you were in Japan for a good period of time. Now, what kind of, at some point you decided you wanted to kind of come to the US and look at kind of solving the plastic and human pollution problem? Kind of what prompted that, and how did you kind of make that shift or that?
You don't move to US. I moved to the Emirates, to Dubai. Yeah. So that was another career opportunity. Obviously, once we had some good success in Japan, we increased the sales, we increased the revenues also on the services and so on. So obviously, when you have good success, I think during the 4 years we had, the subsidiary had 10 years of existence while I was there, and we had like the record best year, second best year, fourth best year, and fifth, something like that, out of the 5 years. So obviously that puts you in the spotlight, because once things happen well, obviously you start to be on the radar of the board and so on. So that's what brought me the next position, and the opportunity to move to the Middle East, to Dubai, but to look after Africa, Middle East, and Asia. So I was still going back to Japan and keep an eye on what I've done there.
So now as you're doing that, because it seems like it's a bit of a shift from being in the industry, working on food, working on packaging. Now, in one sense, looking at plastic and human pollution goes alongside of that. And on the other hand, it's kind of tackling a different problem. And so kind of what motivated that shift, and kind of how did you, what was the direction you went, kind of how did you go about working to tackle that problem?
Yeah, so that's I think it's a conjunction of the alignment of planets. So in my business, I was in contact with all the beverage producer, all the packaging producer, the big brands, the Coke, Pepsi, Nestle, Danone, Century, and so on. So, and they all have switched intensively from traditional older packaging like can and glass, for good reason also, because it has a lower carbon footprint when you want to bring a beverage to a consumer. That is, people don't really realize that, but when you have to bring a beverage to a consumer, a beverage or a shampoo or anything liquid, I would say, a plastic bottle has the lowest impact carbon footprint if you measure that from cradle to cradle. And that is mainly inherent to the fact that glass is heavy. So when you transport one bottle of 1 liter, you transport 400 grams of glass. You have to melt it at much higher temperature, 1,500 degrees. Plastic will melt at 200. So there are inherent properties of the material that makes it at the end less impacting. So there's good reason to bring the plastic, but unfortunately the drawback is the plastic is so cheap that nobody takes care. It's easy to throw away and litter. So we are now facing huge amount of litter, plastic, because it's highly visible, it floats, so everybody sees it. But unfortunately, it's not only the plastic, is unfortunately all the packaging we produce, everything that we produce, we end up littering in a way or the other. So I was in contact of obviously an industry that has to do something about it, because it's, the perception. They will say, okay, we're partly responsible, but consumer also, and so on. Well, I think we as humans, we are responsible, and everybody has his share of responsibility to the problem. But obviously for business, it's important to tackle that, because it's a permit to sell in the future. So I could see the growing concern about plastic pollution that I prefer to name human pollution. And in parallel, I'm always curious, I invested in a startup that developed a blockchain reward engine that was aimed to be used for an app to do social impact, to help people, to incentivize and reward people when they help each other. Very nice approach. So I liked it. And then I just put a bit of money on it, because I like the project, the moral behind, and also I wanted to learn about blockchain, the economics behind that, how you level. So I learned that. I could see their struggle, but also their successes, and then and they had appetite for environment, for social impact, environmental impact, and so on. And one day I said, well, why don't we use your reward engine that is ready for environmental impact? Because I could see there is a big topic there, and we need many solutions. We're not going to solve everything by ourselves, but at least we can do our part, and it will be good. So started to do some market research and so on. Found it that it was a long trend, so it gives space, for a startup to grow before. Because if you come with a good idea, by the time you arrive on the market with your idea working, maybe others are more agile, and all the market is finished and the need is gone. So you need a good a market where you have a bit of time to grow and arrive with your solution. So, but yeah, we found that it was convincing. It was a time for me also, I would say, in my passion of career, to do something else. I had the feeling that I've seen enough of the industry where I was managing well, and it was time that if I wanted to learn more, and you still need to learn more and not just to sit down, and so I had to change. So that's what made the move, and start, create a startup, and with all the benefit, but also all the efforts that it implies. Obviously, I always say I work much more, I earn far less, but it's much more fulfilling. And we are on a movement, on a topic that this is important, where we can be proud of what we do, and we can do something also for our children and the next generation. That is also something important to me.
No, that's awesome. Sounds like it was a good shift. And, a lot of times you find out doing your own business and going your own direction and doing a startup isn't any less work, but oftentimes it is more rewarding, and or focus on something that you enjoy. And so it sounds like it was a good place for you to settle. So, well, now as we've reached the present day of your journey, great time to transition to the two questions I always ask at the end of each episode. So we'll jump to those now. So the first question I'd like to ask is, along your journey, what was the worst business decision you ever made? What'd you learn from it?
Well, I think sometimes you trust too much. And so I made a decision for investment. It was not, fortunately, not too large and so on, but I was still regretting it. So an investment for the company under a time pressure, and trusting that the pre-qualification was done by the person that was advising to go for part of the team. And it turned out that, we could have avoided it. And we haven't put at that time the right contractual safeguards. So basically we spend more money, but the services that were supposed to be delivered never delivered because the company somehow vanished and so on. And we could have frame it so that we really get the money out when the things is more delivered and not in advance under pressure and so on. So that was, I think that it's always annoying when you make a decision that costs money and there's no return.
Yep. No, those are some of the mistakes or the decisions that tend to hurt, but a lot of times you also learn the most from them, and it's an opportunity to avoid that mistake in the future. So it sounds like a good one to learn from. Yeah. Second question now that I like to ask is, so now if you're talking to somebody that's just getting into a startup or a small business, what would be the one piece of advice you give them?
Well, I think startups, small businesses, they need people that are very flexible. So you have to be prepared to be like a Swiss knife. You have your preferences. There are things you like to do. There are things you are good at doing. But in a startup or a small business, you will be forced to do things that you don't like to do and to do things that you don't know how to do it. Obviously, do things that when you don't know how to do it, you have to be, a curious mindset and so on. So if you're not curious, maybe you should not go on that direction, because you need to be able to do self-learning, to be curious and so on. And then obviously to build a team that will compensate the area of your weaknesses. I know I'm not good at certain things. I may just try to touch a little bit, but then I have to find someone that is an expert on that competence that I can trust. And then I don't know micromanagement. They say, okay, that is your section, that is your line of expertise. I trust you, I control, but I trust you, and that is your part. So it's also good because everybody knows what he has to do. But at the beginning, you can't afford to have an army of people doing all the functions of the company. So you have to look for help, advisors, people that can do a bit of work but not all the time, freelance. Get really a team, and like a coach for a sport team, for a soccer team or basketball and so on. You have to find the different players that can make your team successful.
No, I think that's it's definitely some great pieces of advice and some great takeaways. So, well, now as we wrap towards the end of the episode, if people want to reach out to you, they want to be a customer, they want to be a client, they want to be an employee, they want to be an investor, they want to be your next best friend, any or all of the above, what's the best way to reach out to you, contact you, find out more?
So the best way to reach me out is my 360 link. So www.eric360@.com. I put at that, but no. So I repeat, www.eric360.com.
Awesome. Well, I definitely encourage people to reach out, support a great business. If nothing else, make a new best friend. So with that, thank you again, Eric, for coming on the podcast. It's been fun. It's been a pleasure. Now, for all of you listeners that are out there, if you have your own journey to share and you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, we'd love to have you. So just go to inventiveguest.com, apply to be on the show. A couple more things as listeners, make sure to click share, subscribe, leave us a review. Helps us to reach even more startups and small businesses to help them along their journey to success. And on that note, if you ever need help with your along your journey with patents, trademarks, copyrights, or anything else, feel free to go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we are always here to help. Well, thank you again, Eric, for coming on the podcast, and wish the next leg of your journey even better than the last.
Thank you. Hope to see you.